Good. I just saw that Steve Buscemi movie about the helpline worker called The Listener.
Wow, John, what stood out for you?
Well, to me, it was a reminder not only the great work that all helpline folks do, but also how hungry people are for human connection.
Hey, look forward to hearing that. We're gonna hear someone who was on the cover of People magazine for his work with human connection. Let's get it started.
Welcome aboard Lifelines with David and John, your guide to charting the transformative course of crisis intervention and the game-changing 988 Lifeline.
Welcome back to Lifelines with David and John, the 988 podcast, where each call brings a new beginning. From the heart of Atlanta and stretching out all the way to San Francisco, we're diving deep every week into the pulse of crisis intervention, and we're exploring the rich history and the promise of 988. So watch us on YouTube or whatever platform you're following your podcasts. Like and subscribe and join us. But I'm here with my partner, Brooklyn, Dr. John Draper. We've been working all the way back from 1-800-SUICIDE to 1-800-273-TALK to 988 and the future of software and beyond. And we're thrilled to be bringing these episodes to you. We're your hosts. We're brought to you by Behavioral Health Link. And this is episode 3. And human connection and listening are going to be paramount as we talk with a rock star in crisis intervention, someone who has been on those front lines and saved lives and held hands and listened. Kevin Briggs, we're thrilled to have you with us today.
I am thrilled to be here. Two of my heroes.
So, Kevin, a couple of things we're going to do to kind of launch off today and get started is get to know you a little bit. So tell us something maybe people don't know about you. I mean, we know your background as a California Highway Patrolman and the Guardian, the Angel of the Golden Gate Bridge, but tell us something maybe folks aren't as aware of.
Here's a little tidbit. I have 2 Chihuahuas.
What are their names, Kevin?
Well, together that makes one dog, though, right, Kevin?
There you go. I never in my life thought I would have a small dog. And now I talk about it, but I go, oh, man. Katie and Bella.
Oh,
Bella?
I like unusual things, but I travel a lot. I'm gone a lot. So I got this little Chihuahua that looks like a Doberman, but she's, about a foot long or so.
And when they're friends and they get to hang out with each other.
Yes, they're
really
glad. And we know hanging out with your dogs, can really take the stress out of you.
Yeah, that is a huge stress reliever. So, Kevin, the other thing we do to start is we talk about what we're a super fan of. John and I are super fans of. John, what's your super fan of the week that for you?
Oh, well, of course, I just saw The Listener last night, so I'm a super fan of that today, for sure.
Yeah. And I grew up refusing to listen to country music, Kevin, because I was in Nashville and we were all rebels, but now I listen to bluegrass. I'm so embarrassed, but I'm a super fan of Alison Krauss. But Kevin, before you tell us, John and I are going to scribble down what we think you might be a super fan of. Let me just...
We need a Jeopardy music, David.
Where is our background music, Kristen? All right, so John, on the count of 3, you ready? I think Kevin is a super fan of... Oh, look at us.
We'll be on the same order, both of us. Yeah.
I said go staff. Go staff.
Very close second. But as of lately, I'm a very, very big fan of your guys' show.
Oh, best answer so far.
On suicide.
Seconds in the mail, Kevin.
Yeah, our producers will be cutting that. It'll be a short on YouTube. So
it was so real, and you put me there at the scene, and that's what it's about. I mean, and you guys know me. I'm not kidding. If I see something that really hits me, I had to stop it for a bit because I get really emotional. But that show moved me. So.
Look, we're going to get back to moving America's soul on suicide, and we're glad you referenced it. Kevin, you were on the cover of People magazine. Do I remember that correctly?
I was in it. I believe it was a cover, but at first they told him, okay, we want to put you on the cover, but I think I got beaten by some half-naked celebrity.
Well, in that case, this show is over, John. We're not keeping going. Working on it.
Well, I'm not asking you to get half naked either, Kevin.
You don't want to see that.
Hey, so John, we're bringing Kevin Briggs today from our sponsor, Behavioral Health Link, and its crisis software platform. So, tell us a little bit about the ones bringing this work to us.
I'm happy to do that, Dave. We were just talking about how important human connection is, and it's not just that people want to be heard; they want to feel understood. And Kevin, you know that as a crisis worker who was asked in 1996 to start up New York City's hotline. I knew that this was something all of our workers would need to do for every caller to help them feel understood. But I was also asked at that time, way back then, to work with a software developer to create a computer program for counselors to collect and record data while they are on the phone. That desire to help counselors with a tough job of collecting necessary data from callers while not interfering with their ability to listen and listen with understanding, as you talked about, Kevin, it's always been central to my thinking about how to develop call center software. That's what makes the BHL platform for call centers so special. It keeps the relationship, the connection between the caller and the person seeking help at the center of the exchange. It mirrors the natural flow of the crisis conversation, allowing counselors to easily click on items as they are listening. And it makes that data collection unobtrusive so they can stay focused on the caller's needs and collaborate with them towards developing a plan for their recovery. You know, David, a counselor's job is hard enough, and the BHL platform makes that hard job easier so they can help people get through their hardest moments. If you want to learn more about the BHL platform and what it can do for your crisis care system, just check it out on our website at behavioralhealthlink.com.
Terrific, John. So, Kevin, the way we start our programs is with a little bit of a trivia question. This one is going to be an over-under. Are you familiar with the over-under?
Yes.
All right. So we're going to ask John. John, are you 1-1 against our
I am. So this is a tiebreaker today.
This is the tiebreaker.
No.
This is important for you, John. No
I feel
pressure,
nervous.
but Kevin, he's going to pick the number, and you're going to say over/under. If he hits it dead on, he of course wins.
What do I win? Well,
yeah, it's
let's get it after that.
Right. If we go back, Kevin, to 1975, the Golden Gate Bridge is nearing its 500th death. And there's a lot of fatalism in the San Francisco community about you can't really stop someone from ending their life if they're going to do it. And there was research by Dr. Richard Seiden who said, well, let's see about that. Let's find out what happened to individuals who were pulled off the bridge or negotiated off the bridge, found their way. So the over-under, John, is what percentage of people that had been on that apron of that bridge looking to jump, but they came off that bridge for whatever reason, went on to actually survive and they either died of natural causes or they were still alive. What percentage of those individuals, John, survived?
95% is what I think I recall, David.
Okay, so John, you're saying that Richard Seiden's research upended public perception about this? I mean, if you just take the sort of things that were said at face value, then if someone came to the bridge and Kevin Briggs stopped them, they'd just go somewhere else. So it'd be a 0% in that case. But Kevin, John has picked 95%. Is it over or under?
I think he's over slightly.
John, you're 2-1. He's under by 1%. It was 96% went on to actually survive and find some way forward. So really amazing statistic. But Kevin, you knew it was right there. And that, well, and what the Richard says is, okay, maybe we missed some deaths that were suicides that we didn't know. So He says he does concede. Let's just call it 90. And if it's 90, it's still the vast majority of people are surviving. So there's an argument for you both won today, Kevin.
I was thinking 85 to 90. That
Yeah.
was my range, and that's you know what? That's fantastic, though. That
So-
really is.
So, Kevin, tell us a little bit about writing a book, because your book goes through story after story where that's exactly what happened. There was somebody who was standing, they crossed that. And again, for those who haven't been there, or if you have been to remember, that rail comes up to about here, doesn't it, Kevin? It's a short rail.
It is. It's not very tall. It was supposed to be around 6 feet, but they lowered it just before I started working on that bridge because they thought, well, suicide won't happen here. And
You know, I've read that it's actually in this Richard Seiden article that there's some speculation that the architect was a short man and he couldn't see, you know, that 6 foot rail was, and he just, again, they dropped it way down because the view is spectacular.
Yeah.
it is.
Breathtaking.
It is.
But that first suicide occurred, I think, within months of the establishment of the bridge back in 37. So you talk about story after story, Kevin, where you were engaged with someone who had stepped across that rail and were standing on the apron. So just tell people what that apron is and how and the danger that's there.
Yeah. If you go over that pedestrian railing, what parallels the bridge on both sides is what we call the chord, CHORD, and it's like an I-beam. It looks fairly wide until you're standing on it. You know, if you happen to go over and stand on this thing, and then there's nothing else. That's it. About 220 feet down, except for around the two towers, the North Tower and the South Tower. There's just this little bitty pipe that goes around that.
Right.
You know, and we have folks that have stood on that for some time too. But after that, 220 feet down, very few people survive. And if they do, usually they're broken up pretty good.
Well, tell us about writing the book, Kevin. What led you to do that? And how did you think about that as you began to put those stories together?
I had thought about it for a long time, but after got some more press with some things that I did, I was approached by some folks and asked to write a book. And I didn't know anything about this, but I had a lot of stories and I had a lot of history with mental illness. So I decided to do this, and we have a ghostwriter, but we determined that for me to tell the story to the ghostwriter wasn't quite working out as well as it should have. So I would start writing this book late at night from probably 11 at night until 2 in the morning. And I did this for like 6 months. This is my quiet time when I could really concentrate, put myself back at those scenes and get this job done. So I would write these stories and then send it to the ghostwriter. And then he would add some things that we talked about some more. And that's kind of how it came to fruition, was through that process.
You know, Kevin, when I think about you at those scenes and the intensity of those interactions, and I know each situation with each person on the bridge is its own unique experience, but that common thing, as we were talking about earlier, that they're all looking for in that moment, and what you're trying to give them is a human connection, and often as quickly as possible so you can build on it to pull them away from the bridge. Was there a phrase you commonly use, something that you would say to someone most every time that helped you make that connection?
When I would approach someone, I learned through talking to folks who had been over that rail not to come right up to them. I would stay back 15, 20 feet. And I would just raise my right hand, my weapon's on my right side. I would raise my right hand and ask their permission to come up and introduce myself. Hi, I'm Kevin. Is it okay if I come up and talk with you?
Wow.
I don't want to just run up there and start talking or grabbing them. And that's a whole nother thing. But if I can get them to allow me to come up, to empower them, they see the uniform. I don't have to say, hi, I'm Sergeant Kevin Richard Briggs, Highway Patrol. Who cares? I'm just Kevin. And will they allow me to come up and talk with them?
And Kevin, how long, were you a California Highway Patrolman for some period of time and then had your first interaction, or did you start right into this work? How did that begin?
So I started once I got out of the academy in 1990 by Oakland, California, just south of that, a town called Hayward. And after I got hired, they stopped hiring freeze. So I was stuck down in the East Bay for about 4 or 5 years before I was able to get back up to Marin County, and San Francisco connects to Marin County via that Golden Gate Bridge. So I got back home to Marin County, and that's when I started working on the bridge, kind of because I could see the officers didn't want to go down there. And I'm, well, why wouldn't I not want to work down here? It's cold, but it's really cool. You get to meet people from all over the world every day. But I found out rather quickly.
And do you remember that first interaction?
Yeah.
Were you anticipating it? I mean, this sort of set up the actual first time and did you take that approach that you just described to John? Did you do that the very first time, Kevin?
No, I did not know what to do. I was in a car at the time. I had not went to motor school to ride on motorcycles, but I was in the car and I get this call of a young woman over the rail near midspan. And as I'm going down there, I'm not really thinking anything because I don't know. I haven't been trained in this.
Right,
I have
right.
zero training in this. How to talk to someone, what to say, what not to say, how to approach. I was a mess. I kept thinking, this poor woman, when I get there, she's over the rail. I don't know what to say, how to even approach this. But the look in her eyes just overwhelmed me. And I thought, you know what? This is something that I want to dig my teeth into. Look into negotiations. So the first several, I didn't know what to do. And it was horrible. But I think folks saw the empathy in me that I was so scared for them that they did come back over. And I was very, very lucky to be able to speak to these folks. And I don't grab folks. That's a whole nother issue. But I want them to come over on their own. And that's what they did. And I would ask them, what did I do that helped the situation? And what did I do that maybe wasn't so good? So I learned from all of these folks. And it was years later before I went through crisis intervention team training. And towards the end of my career, when I went through the FBI crisis negotiator school, kind of backwards.
And you could have taught all of them what to do and what to say. That must have been really interesting for you.
Yeah, but Kevin, that's exactly what all of us clinicians, it's the same thing. John, psychologist, John's a psychologist, and I'm a licensed professional counselor. But we showed up, I got that first call, Kevin, of someone who they had a shotgun and they were going to end their life. They were just calling to say goodbye. And I remember thinking to myself, how did I get here? I have a master's in counseling. I did up-team audio tapes and videotapes and internships and no training. We got the training later, didn't we, John?
Yeah, but that moment where you realize that it's just your words between somebody's life or somebody's death, but the fact that you when you just looking in her eye, you said, you know what, this is for me. It's as if it chose you, Kevin. And that you said, this is what I want to do. Was that something that you had to tell your other colleagues, this is something I want to do? And they said, yeah, Kevin, do it. Or did they appoint you? Or how did it proceed after that? How did you become essentially the guardian of the Golden Gate Bridge after that?
At first I was angry. How could you put me down here with no training? I was furious. I went to the sergeant's office. Hey, we need to get some training. This is crap, You don't put somebody down here and just leave them to the wolves. So, like I said, eventually we got some training, but I started talking to folks more and more. And I would talk to some Golden Gate Bridge employees or senior officers who had worked down there, anybody that I could talk to get some knowledge and then make sure that knowledge was sound. So, and then I developed my own routine of how to approach someone. And now I teach it to folks. Why don't you grab? Why do you approach like this? These different things. We talk about handcuffing and those kind of things. So I wanted to spell a lot of different things when it comes to law enforcement of how to handle these cases. These ones where it's contact distance, very, very close.
We love it. We love it, Kevin. So Kevin, we're going to move on to our some good news section. And in the news is the actual completion back in January of what the Golden Gate Bridge Authority has called the suicide deterrent system, or their safety net. John, set up a little bit about this net, and then let's look to Kevin for his thinking on what has taken years and actually decades in the making to finish this net.
Well, David, you were saying it'd be great to have Kevin on the Crisis Jam. I think we really need to have Kevin on the Crisis Jam because we need to have this celebration of the Golden Gate Bridge net really noticed. I mean, there was just a headline in an article one day, but this is, I think, the biggest milestone in suicide prevention, other than perhaps the launch of 988 in the last 20 years. Because it's taken since it was built. I mean, there have been people complaining about suicides for many, many years, and they've been able to turn a blind eye to it. And when Eric Steele's The Bridge documentary came out and showed people jumping off the bridge,
Right.
you could not possibly turn away from it anymore. There was a ripple effect from that movie and from people hitting the water that they could see and never forget. And from the voices of families and survivors like Kevin Hines, and eventually people like you, Kevin, too, who are coming forward and saying, we have to do something. So there's much to celebrate there.
So, Kevin, your reflections.
Yeah, I got to tell you, when I first heard about this, and this is going to be embarrassing, and it was very ignorant on my part, I did not like it. I was not for it. Folks come from all over the world to go onto this bridge and look down and see the porpoises and the seals, and I saw the Queen Mary go through all these beautiful views. So when they talked about a barrier, I thought, this is going to obstruct this view. Now, what a horrible way to think. Now that I look back at it, and I want to tell you what changed me. I was at the training, and Mr. Hull, who had lost his daughter from that bridge, and I handled her case. He was at the training, and he approached me, and he asked me, how do I feel about this barrier? And I told him, we have so many people as compared to the number of suicides. And mind you, he had lost his daughter, and we were talking like, oh, this guy's going to hit me. He's going to just knock me out. But he stood back, and he goes, Kevin, I want you to think for a minute. And he held his hands up like cups, and he goes, or like scales. You have a view or a life. And I felt that big after that. He changed me. That simple statement changed me like that. And ever since that, boom, I am all for it. I've spoken with the gentleman who designed it twice. And see, you can see what's happening right now. We're having far less suicides on that bridge. And even the number of folks that were taken off for mental health evaluation. So that is fantastic. I'm 100% for it. And we know most of the folks who do come and think about going off of that bridge are from the Bay Area. So it's fairly easy to get the numbers around that. It's doing its job.
Kevin, your story about how you went from not being a proponent for a bridge barrier to being one that was adamantly for it. That conversion story is really important because what you're talking about in terms of people fighting the view and minimizing the impact of a few lost lives, you can't do anything about it, so we might as well enjoy the view sort of attitude is the predominant attitude that prevents most barriers from being erected around the country, in addition to the cost. But it's really huge. A lot of people are saying we've had so many communities fighting against bridge barriers because they don't want the view to be spoiled, because most of these suicide bridges are beautiful bridges. So your story is so important to repeat to so many people who are still thinking, no, it's the view, not the life.
And I tell that story, it's embarrassing for me now, but it's also the truth. And like we said, John, it's out there. A lot of other people believe in that same thing. So yes, I am very much in favor of it, and now have seen what it does. We're just, once you take away that means when someone may be in crisis, and you folks have probably seen the reports, people may be thinking about suicide for a long time. But once they say, this is it, or they're in an area where they think this is it, almost 48% will attempt within 20 minutes. We're taking that away.
Kevin, we all started out with that idea. If we've never been there, we've not experienced indecipherable pain ourselves. The agony that folks have gone through, it's hard for us to get our heads around that experience. So the concept of that someone could be pulled back and move forward is one that's not natural to us. But one of the stories that I think is so moving to us, and of course it's in the Moving America's Soul on Suicide, is the story of Kevin Berthia. Is Kevin's story in your book, Kevin?
He actually wrote it. Yes. I wanted him to have his own chapter.
So tell folks about that moment, because we went out there with Kevin, the filmmaker Justin Shelby and I. We had met with Kevin, who he lives in Sacramento now. We went to Oakland, where he grew up, in the hard scrabble of some of that area. And then the next morning, we said we were going to go early, like 5 a.m. out to the bridge. And we didn't even, we didn't ask Kevin, because I just assumed he wouldn't have an interest in going. That would be traumatizing. And he called us up early in that morning and said, I'm headed to the bridge with you guys. It was the first time he had been there in 15 years. We landed up, we talked to a couple of police officers because we were trying to find the exact place on the bridge. I think those police officers actually, they saw us with the camera. I think they were a little concerned about what was going on, and they were checking us out, Kevin. I showed them the picture of Kevin. And in fact, let me just bring that picture up. I showed them the iconic picture. Where's my share here? That picture that went global, of course, Kevin, of you and Kevin there together. I said, we're trying to find this spot. And the officer said, he's not supposed to be doing that. So the officers clearly were trying to gauge. But anyhow, we found that spot where there isn't that cord like you talked about. There's just that little bitty pipe.
Right.
And Kevin had told us the story of you running up and then coming around the corner. And it made no sense to me until I was there, because you just think about the rail being that long stretch when it breaks out in that corner. So tell us a little bit about what happened that day with Kevin, and how far in are you at this point, Kevin? You've already been doing this for a while. This was early on in your experience, because that approach you described to John of asking permission and staying distance, Kevin Berthia describes all of that in your interactions.
Right. This was just a normal routine day for me on the motorcycle. And I received a call of a man on the sidewalk on a cell phone saying that he's going to jump. Okay. I start working my way on the sidewalk from the north end of the bridge. So I'd be going south towards San Francisco. And as I near the North Tower, I see him. There's the description. He's still on a cell phone. So I want to go right up to him. I stop 50 feet away, something like that. And as I'm getting off of my motorcycle, he appears to look my direction and then just runs over and jumps. Now, we have this technique if somebody is in a countdown. If they're already over the rail and it looks like they're looking down and putting a foot out and doing heavy labored breathing, that's a countdown. And I can go, something really loud to get him out of that countdown. I did not have that opportunity because he's leaping over. So I yelled something to him, and I don't remember what it was, but he reached out, caught the rail, swung around, and I heard this loud bang. He slammed into it, but I thought he was gone. I couldn't see him. So I ran up there, and then I could see the white of his t-shirt through the slash in the rail.
Kevin, I tell you, having watched the Bridge documentary, it's a brutal film. People frequently talk about, I hear researchers and leaders say that there's a difference between those who are serious about suicide and those who are not. And I hear that. But in the Bridge documentary, there's a man who he's clearly just trying to get across the rail to stand on the apron. and he loses. He's just not. He's not a Kevin Berthia. He's not athletic, and in getting over the rail, he falls to his death. Tragically, I know he was going to stand on the rail to contemplate ending his life. He didn't die of suicide, not technically. Technically, it was an accident. He's trying to get on the apron. You can see him. He just bumbles his. By contrast, Kevin Berthia, John, you and I, leaping across the rail and interrupted by Kevin's yell, aren't athletic enough to clip the rail with our elbow and stand on that little bitty pipe. We would fall to our deaths most likely. So what a shock. So Kevin, what happened next as you realize he has found that pipe somehow as his elbow clips and he falls around and catches? What'd you do next?
So then I see the white t-shirt. So I step back, and my typical thing to do is just raise my right hand, ask their permission to come up and speak with them, to try to empower them right from the start. He wants no part of me. It's still in my head of him screaming at me. You come one step closer and I'm jumping. And I tested it. I would take a half a step, and he was all over me. He was all over me. So it took a while. I mean, quite a while for him to allow me to come up, because I kept telling him I wanted the other officers to stay back. I do not like other officers around. Let me do this. I'm saying that, though, as if I am not breaking that barrier, so to speak. If I cannot make a connection, I'm going to get somebody else, just as a good counselor would. This is not the Kevin Briggs show. It is about that individual. But I thought I could do this. So I kept working with them. Nobody else is going to come by you. I want to let you know, it's just you and I. I just want to come up and talk with you. I will not touch you. I will not grab you. Nobody's going to touch you. And I just kept emphasizing this. And eventually he allowed me to come up. But as you can see in the photo, he doesn't care. His left hand is in his pocket. His right hand, which you cannot see, is up between his skin and his t-shirt because he is so cold out there. And having been up on the ridge, you folks know how cold it is.
Yeah.
Looking down the majority of the time, now I'll tell you, this photo was taken near the end of this event. For a lot of the time, I was kneeling down on that cement, trying to get at eye level with him.
Oh my gosh.
Because I don't like looking down on folks.
Right.
It'd be like if you had a client and you're standing up at your desk and they're sitting down. I don't like that.
Right.
So we discussed a whole lot of things. And I let him talk. We talked about a lot of active listening skills. I used validation, normalization, and gratitude. And those are my big three right there with him, which I want negotiators to really know. And those three, out of all the active listening skills, those are very, very valuable in these sorts of circumstances.
Powerful.
And as we spoke, he started breaking down some, and I focused on what we call a hook, which was his child. But
His daughter.
Yes, but I also know that folks that do go over the rail, with everything that they got going on, now it's also in their mind that, well, you know what, I'm going to be in trouble now because there's signs all over. Don't do this, don't do that. Now he's over, so he thinks he's going to be in trouble. Well, I want to get that out of the way real quick.
Right.
So I'll tell him, most of the time, these folks have not done anything wrong. They're just suffering. So I told Kevin, when you come back over, not if, but when you come back over, I have to place you in handcuffs. It's only because it's our policy. And I've never had an issue. And that way, they know, okay, here's what's going to happen when I come over. Right. I'm not going down to San Francisco County Jail or C Jail.
Right.
I'm going to go to the hospital. So we get that out of the way real quick. And that has really helped a lot of folks. I've never had an incident afterwards. And, yes.
How soon after this incident did you reconnect with Kevin Berthia? And what was that?
Yeah. How did it go next, Kevin?
It was years later. I received a call from the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention to receive a Lifesavers Award. And I said, no, thank you. I didn't want to fly all the way out to New York in those little bitty airline seats, that I spend so much time on. They called me 3 times, I believe it was, and I turned it down every time. Then they went to my commander, the captain. He's in charge of the area office. And guess what? Yep, I'm going to New York. So it's good for the
I
highway.
was there, Kevin. I remember, and I didn't know that was the first time.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were in the audience, John?
Yes, I was. I had no idea that was the first. I mean, now that you say it, it's like, okay, yeah, they did make that statement, but I had forgotten that.
So Kevin, tell the backstory, because Kevin Berthia, his mom, she hoodwinked him, didn't she?
She did. I had a letter that she had written to me, and I still have it, and I keep it right here at my desk. But then AFSP asked me, is there somebody you saved? And both of you know I don't use the word saved with me. I use the word helped. I helped folks in a dark time, a dark day. So I said, no, nobody have done it. So they called me several times, and then they went back to my commander, and he knew of this letter. He said, come on, let's work with these folks. So I went out to Oakland. I said, you know what? I'll use his mom as my third-party intermediary, so to speak. I went out there, and nobody likes a cop showing up at their front door. We're not ready to get a lottery ticket, right? So after she realized who I was and what was going on, we get a big hug. We went in the house and talked about it for quite some time. And then Kevin and I met out in New York City the first time, years later. So it was wonderful. We connected like that.
Well, it's a tremendous story, Kevin, and we're gonna come back to that. We're gonna pick up there in a moment, but we have another segment, Kevin, and this one we're gonna call it's a rapid fire. We're gonna call it every day or never ever. So is this a real thing or not so much, Kevin? So give us every day or never ever, and then if you have a comment on it. But my guess is I saw this woman yesterday. What was she doing? But anyhow, she had a name tag on it. Her name was Jolene. And she said, oh, my God, I've heard so many jokes around the Dolly Parton song. So I'm sure as a California Highway Patrolman, the John Baker and Officer Frank Poncherello have you've heard too many times. But going back to that really heartfelt 80s, 70s and 80s Chip show, Kevin, I'm going to go through some episodes. And you tell me, yeah, that's every day as a Chip. Or never, ever. All right. So the pilot episode, actually, John and Punch teamed up for the first time and chased down a gang of car thieves. So every day or never, ever, Kevin?
In between.
In between.
It does happen. And I had to say every day. If you were in Oakland, every day.
Every day. Oh, my God. All right. And, you know, the Moving America's Soul on Suicide, we spend time in Oakland because that was so... here's another episode. It was called Family Crisis. Punch helps a young boy dealing with his parents' divorce. Every day or never, ever?
Never, ever.
Yeah. High Flyer. Officers encounter a gang of robbers who use a helicopter to commit their crimes.
Every day, right, Kevin?
For me, never. We have helicopters, but not me.
Roller Disco. This was a two-part episode, Kevin. Punch and John go undercover at a roller disco to catch the thieves who are stealing from the disco's patrons.
Never, ever. No.
You would go to the radio discos all the time, right?
Regular one, absolutely.
Yeah.
Me in short, yes.
Yeah.
Battle of the Bands. Punch and John organize a battle of bands to prevent youth crime.
Never, ever.
Oh, come on. Come on. You did something, Kevin, that was like a community engagement or something? No?
Well, we did a lot of stuff. We did toy drives.
There you go.
And all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. So that was...
Well, but you obviously didn't do much to bring down the crime rate, Kevin, because all the things that those guys did, that's the effective stuff, isn't it? Going to the roller discos, going to the battle bands, that's how you manage crime.
That's it.
Biorhythms was the name of the episode. The officers explored the idea of biorhythms as they try to predict and prevent accidents on the highway.
Never, ever. I love it.
All right, one or two more. Officers deal with various holiday-related incidents, including a Santa who causes trouble on the highway.
That is seasonal, but correct.
Okay, final one.
Did you ever get a wild Easter bunny out there, Kevin?
I've had naked people running all over, all sorts of things. Yes.
All right, so Kevin, last one. Rally Round the Bank was the name of the episode. When a bank robbery results in a high-speed chase, John and Ponch must balance their duties with concerns about the safety of bystanders and their own lives.
That isn't every day.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, John, Kevin, let's go back to this story of Kevin Berthia is such an amazing one. But the whole theme of this episode has been we can save people, and getting them that yelling, that interrupting makes a difference. And then they're back and they can forge some way forward. But did you ever have someone that you interacted with and they came across that rail and left the bridge? Did you have anyone who came back, Kevin?
Anyone that came back?
They came back with the intention of ending their life again.
There was only a couple of people, and they did it quite often. Most of the time, though, if we spoke with someone and they came back, we never saw them again. But there was a couple of people who frequented it. Yes.
Well, the other thing about coming back, and this is a different version of the coming back question, and it was extraordinary that you and Kevin got a chance to reconnect. And I wonder, since you've been out there, Kevin, much more the public eye, people are hearing about you, people have seen you on the internet, you've done a TED Talk, you're in the community. How often have you had other Kevin Berthias come up to you and say, I was there too, and you pulled me off the bridge?
Not particularly me, but I get a lot of emails about other places too, other bridges and the gap in Australia and a lot of other places where somebody, either an officer or even a citizen, has come up and people want to tell me about the story, about they were ready to go, and somebody came up and assisted them.
Hey, John, we were in the pre-show talking about this issue, but I love the way that Kevin he developed this human connection and this approach that was so collaborative throughout, engaging. And he says, I didn't save lives. I helped someone. They came across that rail on their own. He tapped in to their own power. There's a scene in that Bridge documentary where a young woman in a heavy jacket has climbed across the rail, and a photographer literally grabs her by the back of that jacket and pulls her across. Yeah. So he did save her in that sense, but that's not what Kevin ever describes. And Kevin, John and I are really curious about your own background. This is not the normal approach. So what gave you that sense of empathy and sensitivity to connect in this way, Kevin? Tell us. It's hard to believe you don't have a background of some challenges yourself. That just doesn't come without a price usually.
There is, and it was a heavy price for me, and it still affects me very much every day. But it's not even in the book. I've only recently started talking about this past few years, but there was some very, very, very extreme, serious abuse from a neighbor when I was a kid, from 8 to 10 years old. And I've done a lot of therapy. I've even done some what they call a stellate ganglion block in my neck. That testicular cancer when I was 20 years old, losing my mother when she was just 49 years old, watching her last breath, some traumatic brain injuries, and then some heart issues, 3 stents in my heart. So a lot of things along the way.
Wow. These are really powerful reminders of how in those moments, when we think, how am I ever going to get out of this? What is my life worth anymore? How can I go on without this person in my life? Am I going to make it through this? That on the other end of that is a career in the highway patrol, connecting with people who've lost connection with everyone else, and you and your words pull them over the rail. I mean, that's a beautiful, beautiful story. Of course, you had no way of knowing that in those terrible years where you're going through those terrible things, Ken.
Right. I think that it did shape me sometimes in more of a not the best manner, as you know, those of us who are survivors of that type of stuff, we tend to draw back a lot. So it can be very, very tough for people who we're with. But on the other side of that with these folks who were over the rail, I always thought, and after speaking with literally hundreds of them, that imagine the courage that it takes to go over that rail.
Yeah.
It takes a hell of a lot of courage. We know this. But imagine the courage that it takes to come back over on your own and face everything again.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of
That's
course.
what I wanted them to do. I wanted to kind of influence that behavioral change in a truthful, very honorable manner, but I wanted them to be able to come back on their own. I will assist them, but if they do that, I think their long-term chances of survival are greater than if I just ran up and grabbed them and pulled them over.
Right. So, Kevin, it's heartbreaking work. It's the courage to do this work. You talk about hundreds of people came back across that rail. It's hard to imagine, though, to cross that rail in the first place. You're in a desperate amount of pain. It's hard for me to believe you didn't have some individuals who ended up ending their lives.
It does happen. And when I talk to negotiators, if you're in this line of business, unfortunately, you have to be ready for that also. And of course, it's the last thing we want, but it does happen. It breaks our heart. You're forever thinking, what could I have done different? What could I have done better? Usually it's nothing, but I was talking with a Jewish rabbi once, and after losing someone, and he told me this, and this was on the phone. He was in New York. New Jersey. And he told me, Kevin, if you ever stop feeling like you do right now, get the hell out of the business because you're no good to anybody. And I had lost one. This is how he tells me, because I was feeling really bad.
Yeah.
It was tough, but that kind of thing, okay, that drives me to want to become better.
Oh, yeah, that's hard work, though, Kevin, to hold that pain, your own personal pain, the pain. Oh, goodness gracious. What did you do during this time of doing this work as an outlet? Hike, run, swim. How did you take care of yourself, Kevin?
Yeah, I had good support. I went to the gym quite often. And I started, after the heart issues, I started doing meditation, which I never would have considered. I would have probably left the room if somebody was talking about it.
Right.
But TM, transcendental meditation, that really helps. Calms you down, puts you in kind of a different place, get your blood pressure a little lower. So we have to have things that we can do, and just like you folks, you hear a lot of stuff. What are you doing for you? Kind of thing is what I tell folks. So it's very, very important. The two Chihuahuas, my dogs, love hanging out with them. Good family support.
It's really, I remember reading some of the testimony that with the hearings on whether or not to have a barrier erected at Golden Gate, and talking with some of the patrolmen and listening to their just heart-wrenching tales of you just don't know what it's like to be trying to talk with somebody, and you never feel safe, you never feel good, you never feel totally confident, and of course after it could be 45 minutes, an hour of talking with them, if they jump, it's something that stays with you forever. And it was those stories, among many other stories of people who had lost someone, that helped erect a barrier. So now you won't be hearing those stories from patrolmen anymore, Kevin, at least very rarely.
Absolutely, very rarely, and it is. I can talk to someone over that rail as long as you want. I'm okay with that. But if they go and you watch it, that's what's in your head forever. And it just haunts you.
Yeah.
You can use that. It can eat you up and devastate you, or you can use that to, all right, I'm going to do, what can I do, more or better? And a lot of times we know these folks are in such a troubled state, an unhealthy mind, that we say, well, it's their decision. They did it. Well, I don't go for that either. They're.
Yeah. So, Kevin, one of the things we all, the three of us, believe is that stories of hope and recovery do save lives. And you're working with Kevin Berthia and actually John on a film. So give us just a quick your hopes for 92 minutes.
Yeah, working with a group called Philanthropy on 92 Minutes. We don't know if it's going to be out later this year or maybe early next year, but we're wanting to spread the word just like we're doing here, talking to folks. And Kevin, actually having really been down that dark path, and then having me as someone who talked to them, what can we do to get to where we're not at that level? We need to get to folks long before we get to that level. What
Great.
can we do right here, right now? Where can we have these conversations? What can we say? What do we kind of want to avoid? So we're hoping that this show will reach a lot of people and let them know there's hope out there. We don't have to get to this extreme. Let's see what we can do right here. We know the phone numbers. You guys are into this. So the numbers are there, the phone numbers, the help is there.
Terrific. So Kevin, let's go to our last segment. And we call this, Kevin, the love or loathe. So just a little bit of your reflections. Look, you worked at one of the most iconic structures in the world. And also you talked about, did you say you were in Marin or Sonoma? The 100,000 plus people a day coming through that bridge, as this show is sponsored by Behavioral Health Link. So in homage today, I'm wearing the MARTA shirt from Atlanta, but the bridge authority, that's transportation, right? So Kevin, let's talk about some of the more mundane things, the 10 million tourists, the 100,000 commuters. I'm going to mention some of the day-to-day, and you tell us love or loathe, and if you have a reflection. First, traffic congestion.
Loathe it. Horrible.
The bridge has that, it changes lanes both directions. I'm assuming you had accidents on the bridge, Kevin.
We didn't have that when I was working down there, so we would have head-ons.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. My last crash was just before I promoted to sergeant. 13 cars, all lanes blocked for hours, injuries. It was miserable.
David,
Okay.
who likes traffic congestion? That's still love there. It's all love.
Yeah, it's a job, John. The next one, Kevin, tourists.
I'm going to say loved it. It would test you. How many times I have to hear, how do we get back to San Francisco a day? But you know what? You know that going into it.
All right. Bicycle traffic, love or loathe?
Loathed it. They can be some mean people.
Yeah.
Weather events. You had fog all the time, I'm assuming.
All the time. Yeah. I liked it. I loved it because I don't like the heat and the sun glaring down on me. So
Earthquakes. You have an earthquake while you were there, love or loathe?
I'm going to say love because we didn't get the damage so much. 1989, but that was just before I came on. So
yeah, you just got the rocking.
Yes.
Let's see. Strikes and protests.
All the time. Loathed it. Hated that.
Which one is most comes to memory most?
We had folks that came up. They were called. There was the name of these folks. Like every first Friday or second Friday of the month, there were bicyclists. They were called critical mass, and they would come up and try to take the bridge. Hundreds of bicyclists. Pain in the butt. Pain in the butt. And they're blaring radios. Some were naked. I mean, just okay.
I've done the beta breakers in San Francisco several times. The nakedness in San Francisco is a thing. That's come up several times in this episode. Hey, you got a big bridge, maintenance and upkeep.
Loved it. Great folks, steel workers, the iron workers, the painters, because they were also watchful eyes. And they were nice folks.
So, Kevin, this has been a great episode. This program is sponsored by Behavioral Health Link, and just going back a moment, John, I think today we've got to acknowledge the founder of Behavioral Health Link, Greg Graham, is in the hospital and struggling. Such a visionary in thinking through how technology and data could support people in crisis, and thinking that through 25 years ago, John, is pretty inspiring. You've met Greg, and
yes, I have. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your first interactions with
Oh,
Greg
I mean,
and
Greg,
thinking.
the first time I came to BHL when I was the director of Lifeline was really to see what all the fuss was about, David. And the fuss was that there was this amazing air traffic control like system that had this software that coordinated care across the system, and it all emanated from the GCAL and BHL's work and Greg's vision that he implemented statewide, the first statewide crisis now coordinating service in the United States. So I had to see it. But more than anything, it was just talking with Greg and seeing how much he cared and his really gentlemanly Georgian Southern gentleman demeanor, slow talker, big heart, big mind, and big vision. And David, we're going to do whatever we can to maintain his legacy of excellence, because that's what the man is all about.
Yeah, it's been 22 years since I first met him. Sat down for lunch right there on Peachtree Street in downtown Atlanta, and he was talking no wrong door, and this concept of breaking through all these barriers and interactions that feel like punishment. So, John, let's end. I think it's time for some plain truth, John.
Yeah, and I'm so glad, Kevin, that you were here with us today. Just reminding us, yes, you were a cop, but it wasn't your gun or your badge that kept people from jumping off the bridge. It was your words. Kevin, you were there at the right time, the right place, and you knew exactly how to be there for people in despair, and you still do. How to be with them and for them. Hotline counselors also get calls from people at their edge, often from their homes where they have access to things that could kill them right now. We get calls from people with a gun or pills in their hand, and the counselor's words are all that stands between their life or death. Those high stakes moments don't really present themselves at clinics or hospitals or other treatment centers, but you know where else this happens? With friends and family members. They just need to know what to do. In 1982, my wife's parents were going through a terrible divorce. Laura walked into the kitchen one evening and found her father standing next to the sink with a gun to his head. She walked over to him carefully and put her hand on his shoulder and told him, "Don't. Please put the gun down." I am so thankful he did. Years later, I took on the Lifelines mission very seriously to effectively reach and serve all persons in suicidal crisis in the U.S. through a single toll-free number. I soon learned that we weren't likely to ever accomplish this mission fully, at least not just through a national number. Even if everyone knew the number and could access it, not everyone in suicidal crisis is going to call. And if they all did, we wouldn't have enough trained helpers on the line or in the clinics to help them all. But we knew that we were training our counselors. What we were training them to do was really working to keep people safe. And I wondered if we did a national campaign to educate people, give them the basic steps that our counselors do, maybe they could be there at the right place at the right time and know how to help their friends or loved ones in despair. So we launched BeTheOne2.com with its 5 basic steps for helping people in suicidal crisis. And later the JET Foundation, the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, launched their Seize the Awkward public health campaign to guide friends wishing to help one another and through those difficult conversations. And then Active Minds' Ask, Acknowledge, Support, Keep in Touch initiative also refers to these same tried and true steps that effectively leverage the power of basic human connections to help us all get through our darkest times. Check all these resources out and please spread the word about them. We can't all be guardians of the Golden Gate, but we can sometimes be guardians of the golden years for our friends and loved ones. My father-in-law had some great years after that desperate day in 1982, living well into his 80s. He and my wife are the best of buddies, and he got to marry a new wife, and that brought him a great deal of happiness. He also got to meet my daughter and his 3 other grandkids. And of course, he also got to meet his 2 goofy sons-in-law. That's a wrap, David.
Oh, Kevin and John, that's some plain truth and a real lifeline. Thanks so much to our amazing guest today, Kevin Briggs. Your heart and love and care that comes through in your work is just so inspiring and effective. It saves lives and helps people. So thank you so much for being with us. Next week, John, our guest is Professor Lifelong Chan from Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. And we're going to be talking about everything from Zero Suicide 5 in Liverpool to her work in a country that's just decriminalized suicide and is lifting up its own crisis system. So thanks so much to all of you for letting us pull you in another week. Join us next time when we continue to navigate the currents of crisis and care. Until then, remember, every call, every life, every story matters. Stay connected, stay supportive. See you on the next Lifelines.
Take care.